If you're a STEM project manager or manager, you're working really hard right now. You're in a cycle of constantly checking other people's work, doing things, feeling like you are the only person who can handle some of the complex questions and technical things that come up on your projects. And I see you. I'm an engineer, I'm a parent, I'm a business owner, and I too have been in the cycle of overwork that you may be in right now. Now, here's the thing about this. This is a learned behavior. We watched our managers overwork. We watched them not trust other people with the important stuff. We watched them be the guru, be the person with all the answers, the smartest person in the room, and get promoted for it. And so, if we look at what we learned, what we internalized early in career, we internalized overwork. But there's something that is shifting within the work environment right now. And it's a shift away from being the expert who does it all and knows it all that advanced careers 10 or 20 years ago. This is one of the reasons we're seeing a lot of concern about, is AI going to upend my job? Because it's not just about experience and expertise anymore. The biggest value you can provide in your role as a project manager, as a leader in your organization is about adaptability and about developing and empowering others. It's about scaling the impact of your work through your team and not because you know all the answers and can do it all yourself. So right now, you're getting hit with a double challenge related to overwork. And it's first that the old model that you learned by watching your manager about work harder than everyone else, be the smartest person in the room, have all the answers, that doesn't necessarily lead to advancement anymore. In fact, it can actually keep you stuck in the same role for a long period of time because no one else can do what you do. The second thing that's happening is that in a lot of cases, you have internalized that old model so deeply that it's hard to even see that there could be another way. This is, in fact, what happened to me when I hit burnout when I was working in engineering. Because I believed that I should be doing it all myself. I should know all the answers. And even when I was exhausted, knowing something needs to change, I would keep defaulting back to that old model that I had seen work for my manager, and my manager had probably seen working for their manager. And so if you're there now, you're not just fighting too much work to do, too few people to do it, and not enough time. You're also fighting decades of conditioning about what success looks like in your role at work. And so what if the real leverage and the first leverage you have that you can immediately take care of today, as soon as this video is done, is the internal piece of this, the mindset piece of this. What I have found in my coaching work with STEM project managers and leaders specifically is that the first bit of leverage here that can immediately halt or minimize current and future overwork is actually inside you. And it's unlearning these decades of conditioning that we have around what it means to be successful at work. It means that we have to learn to trust people and to raise our expectations for the people we are working with. Now, to understand why, we have to go to the world of psychology. So let's talk about why your expectations for other people and how that shows up for you is precisely the thing we need to shift to stop this cycle of overwork. In 1964, a study by Dr. Robert Rosenthal, a Harvard business professor in psychology, proved something powerful about our expectations of other people. He did a study at an elementary school south of San Francisco. In it, he gave all the children a test, and then he told the teachers this was an IQ test that had the ability to predict which kids were about to experience huge growth in their IQ. And he told the teachers specific children's names that he expected to see this dramatic growth based on the test. He followed these kids for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, the kids he had told the teachers would have dramatic growth did in fact have dramatic growth. But there was a catch here. The original test was actually fake. Yes, he had given the kids the test, but the students' names that Rosenthal had told the teachers that were going to have that dramatic growth, those children's names were completely random. So what happened here? Well, Rosenthal looked at that too, and he found that the teacher expectations of the kids, because he had told the teachers that the kids had high potential, were directly related to the kids' actual performance. Rosenthal found that the expectations affected teachers' moment-to-moment interactions with the children in 1,000 almost invisible ways. For example, the teachers would give the students that they had been told had high potential more time to ask and answer questions, more specific constructive feedback, and more approval. In other words, expectations of the teachers changed the teachers' behavior towards the kids. And the kids recognized that and in turn rose to meet their teachers' expectations. Now, as you might suspect, this has tremendous implications for the workforce, especially for the expectations of managers and leaders with those that they manage. But this also applies to any other interaction you may be having with another human being. People will rise or fall to your expectations. But why? I shared a moment ago that they'd had this finding in an elementary school, but to understand why this happens and how it applies to us throughout the range of human interactions, we have to understand how our brains filter information. And so let's get a crash course here on neuroscience. Your brain's filter is called the reticular activating system, which I'm going to refer to as RAS. And I'm going to give you an example of how this works. So we were on vacation. We were in a hotel, a plane ride away from where I currently am recording this video for you. And so we were in an elevator, and if you're anything like me in an elevator, you kind of look at the ground, you look around, you like don't make eye contact with other people in an elevator. You definitely don't like start a conversation in an elevator. And so we're in this elevator, and I look over and I see somebody with a hat on that looks a lot like this. Now, you may recognize the logo on this hat, or you may not. I recognize it because this is Penn State's logo, and I went to Penn State. So when I go places and I see things with my alma mater logo on it, I am much more likely to strike up a conversation with that person, even if it's in the elevator thousands of miles away from where I live. And so I see this hat. And what happens in my head at that moment is like, okay, well, this person and I have something in common. We'll say hi, we'll strike up a conversation. And it completely disrupts my normal behavior when I am in an elevator full of strangers, all because I have the expectation that someone wearing a hat like this is going to have something in common with me. And therefore, they're not a stranger in an elevator. They're just someone that I haven't talked to, a friend I haven't made yet. That's how this RAS system works. You have an internal, usually unconscious expectation that your brain tells RAS to know what to notice based on what you believe about someone. In my case, anywhere I go, if I see that logo, if I see someone with that hat, if I see someone with a t-shirt with a Penn State logo on it, my brain tells me that the expectation of this is that, okay, this is probably a good person that I should go talk to, even if I don't know them. After that expectation happens in your head, this focuses your attention. So I just said a moment ago that when I go places and I see a Penn State logo, it pops out. Do I pay attention to other alma mater logos? Not so much. And so you may have had this experience too. If you think about your alma mater where you were like walking down the street, ignoring what was going on, and then all of a sudden, oh, something came to your attention because somebody had a t-shirt on of the school that you went to or something like that. This is your RAS system at work. Okay, so now that your brain is paying attention to a particular thing that you told it to pay attention to based on the expectation, now you have a behavior that happens. So again, I'm going to stick with my elevator example. At the elevator, my behavior is different because of the expectation that someone with this hat is somebody I can talk to. And so my behavior is then different. That instead of looking at the floor or looking at the ceiling or ignoring everyone in the elevator like I usually do, I strike up a conversation with a stranger. Then that stranger responds. That person will typically not ignore me. They'll mirror my behavior. They'll at least have some small talk. And that behavior ends up confirming my original expectations that this is someone that is okay to talk to. Now, does that mean no one else in the elevator is okay to talk to? No, but I wouldn't go out and talk to them initially because I have the expectation that we should just all ignore somebody in the elevator unless it's somebody that looks like they're safe to talk to, in my case, that has the Penn State hat with their logo. And so let's go through an example of this at work. Again, focusing on this reticular activating system and how, given just an expectation, we will alter our behavior and potentially cause others' response to alter their behavior. And so let's say we have an expectation that someone cannot handle a complex explanation. Maybe I am managing someone who is a younger staff person, and we're like, they're just not going to understand what's going on here. And so then in my head, we're focusing on, okay, I don't think my expectation is they're not going to get it, and I'm going to focus on the fact that they aren't going to get it. And so then how do I act in this situation? Well, I over-explain. I may give a 10-minute explanation of this very technical piece of it, even as their eyes are glazing over. But I am so focused on the fact that I don't think they're going to get it. I'm explaining all the things, probably way more than they need. And then I get to the end of my explanation. And their response to that is probably not going to be to ask questions because I was so busy showing how smart I am by over explaining this. And then saying, oh, do you have any questions? And they're like, well, no, because I don't want to be dumb if I ask questions. And so they disengage. They may not ask any questions. They may even take offense. They may say, okay, you just over-explained. I woman-splained. I man-splained them. And they may not tell you that. And so all of this starts with this expectation. And when we have low expectations of what other people can do, we create what I call a doom loop. They fall to my expectation, thus reinforcing my low expectation, and then we go around in the circle again with every interaction that I have with this person. Now, all we need to do to break free of this doom loop is to reframe our expectation to a positive expectation. So I'm going to take the same example. How do we do that? So if instead of thinking that they can't handle a complex explanation, what if I think to myself, okay, I think they can handle a complex explanation if I explain it well enough. And so I focus on the fact that I think they can handle this. I just need to make sure I can explain it properly. My behavior is, okay, I'm going to explain a little bit, and then I'm going to stop and say, okay, I gave you some information. What questions do you have about this? What else do you need to know to be able to, let's say, complete this project? Maybe my explanation is around a task they need to do for a project. And because I engage them directly, they engage right back. They ask questions. We have a productive discussion, and they go on their way. And what I've done when I start with this positive expectation is I create what I call a rise loop, where someone else rises to your expectations. And just like the doom loop, this creates another cycle, this case, positive. And so that when I think other people can handle things, this leads to a whole cascade of events that results in me not needing to overwork as much because I have shown by my expectations that I trust people to carry their weight and I don't have to carry others' work for them. So my question to you is, are you falling into a cycle of doom loops where you constantly have low expectations and people fulfill those low expectations? Or do you have the expectations that can lead to the rise loops, that you have a positive expectation of other people carrying their fair share at work? Now, I want to show you a little bit more about how these expectations show up, because it seems like such a tiny thing, doesn't it? That just altering your expectations of other people from a negative expectation to a positive expectation could really reduce the amount of overwork that you're doing. And so I'm going to take this example. Let's say you are, we'll say, in mid-career, and you have a thought that you have a new idea about how you want to do things, but the older leaders within your firm, you're like, they're going to be resistant to my idea. That's the thought you have. And you're walking into this meeting to share this idea, and you're starting with this expectation. Well, that's a doom loop. They're likely going to fall to your expectations. Now, why? Well, because there's some common ways that STEM professionals reinforce their expectations when your RAS is filtering for resistant. And here are some examples. So these examples are coming from actual STEM professionals I have coached and talking around, okay, I'm an emerging leader bringing an idea into a bigger meeting. My leadership, I think they're going to be resistant. How do we show up in those situations? Well, we do things like we assume negative intent of whatever comes out of that older person's mouth. We will do things like over-explain. We will do things like pretend we're a lawyer in court and make our very long business case about why we need to do what we need to do. We will steamroll. We will generally act like we need to prove ourselves and be the smartest person in the room. We may even act condescendingly towards other people. And I want to point this out because when you are stuck in this, I need to prove that my idea is the best one, which starts with walking into a room with the expectation that there's going to be resistance, this is the exact opposite of what you need to do if your goal is to get buy-in on a new idea. Other things you might do. You may not invite that person into the discussion or implementation of the new idea, assuming that that moves forward. You may also dismiss any concerns that other person has, again, if you're coming into it with that negative expectation. So I want to contrast this with how you might show up if your initial thought is positive, if you have the expectation that that older person may be open to my new idea, and how starting with this expectation creates a rise loop where people will rise to your expectations. So common ways STEM professionals reinforce their expectations when your RAS is filtering for what I call possibilities are as follows. Here's some examples again from real people that I have worked with. They will assume positive intent of whatever comes out of the other person's mouth. They will uplevel their own communication skills, if needed, to be more persuasive about their new idea. So they look at this and say, okay, if I know this person, or I am willing to consider that this person will be open to my new idea, what's their perspective? What might they care about? And they approach it from the standpoint of how can we come together to move forward with my new idea, which again causes you to show up differently. They will ask that other person for and listen to their inputs, which is how we begin that process of getting buy-in. And they will listen to and address their concerns. They won't just brush them off. And again, all of these ways of showing up, they all start with the positive expectation of the other person. And when you respond in this way, other people respond to you and you all rise together. Let me take another example. So let's say you're a manager and your thought is that younger person is too inexperienced to contribute effectively on this particular project. Common ways we reinforce our expectations when our RAS is filtering for inexperience are first, only giving that person tasks that they have done before. We may also provide excessive handholding, so we essentially act as an enabler that they learn to rely on. You know this is you if you feel like you are the bottleneck on all of your projects, rather than helping them think for themselves. You may be a micromanager, including coming to someone's rescue when they mess up. You might be providing feedback only when things go wrong. We make justifications for not providing sufficient time, coaching, training, or resources for the person we're managing to be supported in our work. And we may fall into the trap ourselves that it's just faster to do it myself rather than delegating it to someone else, even to the point that we ourselves may burn out. So if we start with the positive expectation, the thought that, okay, this younger person has high growth potential. What do we do instead? How do we create this rise loop? Well, again, we create it by our behaviors. Our expectations focus our attention, and they result in behaviors that allow other people to rise to our expectations. And so in this case, those behaviors may include giving stretch projects to that younger person so they can grow, providing positive and constructive feedback, providing sufficient time, coaching, training, or resources for them to be supported in their work. This could also include up-leveling your own leadership skills when it comes to training or coaching other people, because you know that investing in them now leads to greater gains and less burnout for everybody later. So the point here is that if you want a rise loop, if you are stuck in this overwork cycle, in part because you show up in a lot of places with this negative expectation that, again, is something you inherited, not something that you designed, all you need to do is redesign your mindset with a positive expectations. And so let's practice doing this. Let's say you were in the doom loop with the expectation of, I'm working with a difficult coworker. How do you reframe that expectation to be positive? Well, you could say, okay, my coworker has a valid perspective. And I want you to consider, because we've all had difficult coworkers, if we took our difficult coworker and we approached every single interaction with them with the idea that I want to understand, I think they have a valid perspective, even if I don't agree, we would have less conflict, we would have more productive conversations, and we would have what I would call constructive conflict conversations where we disagree, but we're able to come to a consensus that is better for the team. Let me take another example. Doom loop expectation. Other people are against me. The new expectation, we can find mutual ground. Again, this is super common in a conflict situation, but I've also seen this with leaders walking into a room to maybe give a presentation on a new idea and feeling like my whole organization is resistant to change. Now, that may be true from a factual perspective that your organization doesn't have a history of being open to change. However, what I will tell you is that if you walk into a conversation and your expectation is that I'm going to share my thing and they're not going to do anything with it anyways, you just doomed yourself from the start to two things. One, not getting the idea through. And two, if you do get the idea through, you will be the only one working on it, which again is its own form of the doom loop, coming back to this overwork thing. And so there is nothing, and I'm not saying have rose-colored glasses expectation. What I am saying is walking into your interactions with fellow humans with the expectation that the other person is doing the best they can with what they have, and that that person can be successful, and you can find mutual things that can move the project forward. So let me give you one more example here. Old expectation. My staff are too green to fully contribute. Green is another word for inexperienced. And so if you reframe that expectation to, my staff are smart, resourceful, and can figure it out with proper support, you again approach every single interaction with that person differently. And we know that this isn't a little thing. This is a big thing, as I shared with the study with the teachers, because when you approach other people, especially people you are managing, with the attitude that they can be successful, they are capable, you show up in 1,000 little ways that allows them to come into this rise loop where they rise and they grow, and ultimately they put you in a situation where you don't have to fall into the trap of overwork. And so how do you know if you need an expectation reframe? So here is a question that you can ask yourself in any situation where you're interacting with another human being. You can ask yourself, is my expectation in this conversation that this person can be successful? And I'll tell you what, if you ask this question of yourself And the answer to this question is anything other than yes. If you find yourself making justifications for why the other person can't be successful, you are falling into this mindset trap of negative expectations. And these negative expectations, they don't just lead to overwork, they will make you miserable at work. And at some point, they will cause your growth, your ability to advance your career, your ability to grow your company if you're a business owner, to stagnate. And so your challenge this week is to practice this. You can't unsee the we need to interact with people with positive expectations once you see it. And so we just have to make this a habit. And so what I want you to do is to pick one person you'll interact with this week. Ideally, someone you've been holding a negative assumption about, or someone who's less experienced than you are, because it is hard. Like you have to focus and practice focusing your RAS, especially when someone is less experienced than you, to show up with that positive expectation. What I'm sharing with you today is simple, but it is not easy. And then what you're going to do once you've picked that person, I want you to say to them explicitly, I appreciate working with you because you're smart, you're capable, and I have an expectation that you can figure things out. Now, I'm not letting you think your way out of this. There's a reason that I'm saying say this to them explicitly. Because we don't, so the RAS system, that is all in our head. But the pattern we often need to interrupt is, okay, that expectation that's in my head, oh, I just said that thing, which tells me there is a negative expectation that I need to disrupt. So in order to disrupt the pattern, we cannot think our way out of disrupting the pattern. We have to say things, we have to behave in ways that disrupt the pattern and allow us to catch it. So saying this out loud explicitly gets internalized back into your head so that next time your RAS kicks in and wants to give you that negative expectation, you know how to disrupt the pattern because you've already done it. You've already started training your brain to do something differently. Now, if you want to be a manager of the year, I want you to also add this after number 2. If you're their manager and you have talked about tasks in this conversation, add on X project, whatever project you've been talking about, what would help you to be successful. Now, what I want you to remember here is that, yes, when it comes to overwork, there are definitely things you can do outside of yourself. However, people at work rise or fall to your expectations. And if you have consistent expectations that other people are going to fail, that I can't trust them, you're not going to be able to delegate work. You are always going to be stuck in a cycle of overworking, feeling like you need to do everything yourself, feeling like you struggle to work on a team because nobody else is as smart as you. You are always going to be trapped in this cycle of overwork. You deserve better than that. And so start by checking your expectations and doing the exercise we just went through when you find a situation where you're like, oh, I'm coming into this with a negative expectation, of reframing that expectation to a positive expectation. Because while people at work rise or fall to your expectations, there are very, very real consequences here. Because high expectations of those you work with, falling into that, doing things so you fall into that rise loop, which again, all you need to do is start with that positive expectation, means that you'll have lower incidences of overwork for you. And this is especially true if you are a leader or a manager with direct reports.